Oh man, I tell you, I hate independent America. You got to understand. You see some of these pictures here of me with all of these former heads of state from the former Soviet Union as they became independent. My first trip ever outside the U.S. was in 1986 to Moscow and then Leningrad and the Caucasus, Georgia, Azerbaijan, Armenia. And I was expecting the evil empire, not knowing much when I was 16. And instead I got all of these young people who were desperately interested in what was happening outside their country and really admired the values of the United States, the free market, the consumer choices, the liberties, the ability to speak your mind, the openness of the press, of information, all of these things. And I saw the role of Radio Free Europe and Voice of America and the importance of indispensable America. And when the wall came down, and then when Gorbachev announced the collapse of the Soviet Union and let his own empire go peacefully, I was incredibly proud to come from a country where it was our values, not just the arms race, not just our economy, but what we stood for, that really mattered, the projection of American values globally. So I clearly love indispensable America.
So how come you've chosen the book?
It appeals to me. Because the world has changed, you see. I mean, I have seen what I just talked to you about with the response to Iraq and Afghanistan. I've seen the response to globalization and its discontents after decades in the United States where the middle class has been hollowed out. And I know that as the world's only superpower, we don't just have one choice. We truly have choices for other foreign policy options. And I've seen what happens when you have an incredibly smart guy, Obama, who wants to do the right thing, say indispensable, but the people aren't with him. And the global environment is too hard to get it done. So instead, he looks incredibly weak. He says Assad must go. And then instead, Obama goes. Assad is still there. And he says Russia has to leave Ukraine. Russia's not going anywhere. Right? So, I mean, Russia has to stop hacking, cut it out. What's he, the little brother? Stop touching me. That's useless, right? So I think the worst possible thing you can do is hold on to something and not follow through. You got to walk the talk. And I think that independent America, where we truly lead by example, but where we aren't the world's policeman or the world's architect of trade, is actually the one successful foreign policy choice that America can not only talk to, but actually execute on over a long period of time. Where we become the ultimate too-big-to-fail economy and political system. We lead by example, and other countries want to emulate us and want to invest in us, which the Chinese are far too smart. If they see that we're doing really well, they're not going to poke us, right? Now, here's the problem, is that Trump actually embraces internationally a lot of independent America. But domestically, Trump is incapable of leading by example because of his unfitness for office, right? Trump has appointed a number of quite capable members of cabinet. He's also appointed some of the singularly most unfit members of cabinet that we have ever seen, right?
They have to get through sort of congressional...
But he has a Republican majority. They're all going to get through. Maybe one will get tossed out, but generally they'll all get through. I mean, you have a client denier in charge of EPA. That's absurd on its face, right? You have the person in charge of housing and urban development, a $75 billion institution, who has actually said that he has no capability to run a department in cabinet. But Trump needed a black guy. So he said, well, let's stick him someplace he can't do too much damage. That's absurd, right? So, unfortunately, you also have a guy who at home is saying Muslim ban, build a wall, is clearly incredibly divisive in terms of Hispanics, Mexicans coming and raping our women, and Muslims wanting to blow us up, and all of the comments he's made on the handicapped and women and the rest. That's a problem. that independent America requires a leader that the rest of the world admires, and that is, and people don't admire Trump. They voted for him, I think, for very legitimate reasons. Right? I think there are lots of reasons in the United States to vote for Trump if you don't care about foreign policy, and there are many reasons not to care about foreign policy in the United States. There are, it's like with Brexit. You say, these people have just been lying to me and have done nothing for me for decades, and they're like Palestinians with rocks. You're Palestinian, you know that the Palestinian Authority and the Israelis and the UN and the Americans and the Europeans have been promising you the world for decades, and you've gotten nothing. And you see a member of the Israeli Defense Forces and you've got a rock and you throw it. It's not because you think it's going to fix anything. You run away. But the rock gives you agency. The rock gives you a voice. And Brexit was that rock for the UK, and Trump is that rock for many in the United States, for many undereducated white, and particularly men, who feel like the country doesn't reflect them anymore. And in lots of ways, they're right. But if you care about America's role in the world, then Trump is a disaster.